Good morning, everybody. A very vulgar question. Why do dogs lick between their legs? Quite simply because they can. Why did an elected DA of Calumet send hugely inappropriate text messages to a domestic abuse victim? Because he can. Because he thought he could get away with it. Because he had been getting away with it with many, many people. We hear it of 15 that came forward. But also because he thought that he could threaten and keep quiet anyone who tried to expose his wrongdoing. Kratz at one time was the chairman of the Crime Victims' Rights Board, and that was back in 2007. And he boasts about the fact that during his time he presided over every hearing or complaint ever filed before that body. I'm sure you did, Ken. I'm sure you checked out every single one to see which ones you would like to send inappropriate messages to. He was also a former chairman of the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association. And that body is quite important in that it is the one that recommends its members to serve on the Crime Victim Rights Board. He also, Ken Kratz, likes to boast about the fact that he was a prosecutor for 25 years. We're not talking about a spring chicken, are we, Ken? Anyway, in an email that he sent on Monday the 2nd of November of 2009 at 1:10, he wants the Department of Justice to cut him some slack. He wrote, and I'm going to be editing slightly what he said. Please go and check out Convoluted Brian. I'll leave the link below. You can read all of the emails in their gory details. It's absolutely fascinating, well worth a read. They're in groups, so you tend to get the same email repeated. You need to go to the bottom one and then read them upwards to make sense of them, okay? But anyway, here we go. So this is Ken Kratz in his email. He writes, I have read the text messages and responses. He then points out, other than providing a few compliments to this young lady, it does not appear to be sexual at all, nor does it suggest that course of conduct. No profanity or vulgarity is used, quite the opposite. Other than the timing of the communication, that was during the criminal case, and noting that any future conversations with her would have to be after the case is concluded, it remains a series of respectful messages. Seriously, Ken, seriously. This is some of the other email from Mr. Kevin Potter of the Department of Justice, minus the bit that I read you yesterday. So this is his email to Ken on Tuesday, November the 3rd at 2:46. He writes, as I indicated in our telephone conversation, so obviously there's been a lot of phone calling as well yesterday, we have concerns about your conduct. You are not kidding, Kevin. On a number of different levels. Absolutely, Kevin, you're spot on there. In your email below, you indicate that your text message comments to, we'll use the initials SVG for the woman who was the victim here, were complimentary in nature and do not appear to be sexual at all, nor do they suggest that course of conduct. He writes, contrary to your assertions, these comments go well beyond mere compliments and cross the line into what could be construed as sexual harassment. He points out, telling SVG that she is pretty is complimentary. Telling her several times that she is hot, or referring to her as a tall, young, hot nymph, certainly does have sexual overtones, as do your comments that you are beautiful and would make a great young partner someday. I'm not sure, Ken, is that a partner as in a wife or a girlfriend, or is that some sort of, partner in a law firm? We don't know what your sort of take on that was. Or I would want you to be so hot and treat me so well that you'd be the woman in capitals. Are you that good? In your November 2009 email to Special Agent Thelen, you indicate that you would like to keep this out of the media if possible. I infer from this that, as well as other statements in your text messages, and remember, this is what Ken wrote in his text message. Remember, it would have to be special enough to risk all. Special Agent Thelen points out that you were aware this conduct was inappropriate and that there could be consequences if it became public. Over a 3-day period, you sent SVG 30 text messages. She was disturbed enough that she contacted the police department, where she expressed concerns that if she did not do what you wanted her to, that you might throw out her case or possibly retaliate against her in other ways. I wonder what the other ways might have been. She felt especially vulnerable because she had confided in you details of her relationship with her ex-boyfriend, the defendant. I can imagine the joy you had in asking for those details, Ken. Sicko. Now, in the end, of course, Sweaty had to step aside and let someone else take over that prosecution. There was no way he could be allowed to carry on with that. And the special agent Potter that's speaking to, that sent this email, continues with saying, pointing out that had you continued to handle the case, you would have placed yourself in a vulnerable position. Vulnerable position, yeah. If you had plea bargained this case, it could be construed by SVG that you had done so because she would not respond to your overtures. However, if you had prosecuted to the fullest extent, you could be criticised for being harsher in order to ingratiate yourself. But of course, Ken retaliates. He wrote, "Before you become too enamoured with what could have happened from an ethical standpoint, what violation did I make? What authority does DOJ have for providing the WDAA information about the behaviour, public or private, of elected DAs?" In other words, trying to tell them to shut up. And then here comes the threats. Veiled slightly, but here come the threats. "I assume that if you believe that I am unfit to continue with the Crime Victims' Rights Board," because remember, being a member of the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association, they are the ones that recommend people for that board, and the DOJ was saying that they would need to get in touch with the Wisconsin District Association, and they then, of course, then the Victim Rights Board would also know. Okay, so where did I get to? The threats. I assume that if you believe that I am unfit to continue with the CVRB, that I'm unfit to continue as constitutionally protected role as DA of Calumet. Are you suggesting I resign that as well? Well, Ken, yes, he is. And thankfully, you did eventually. But as I say, not without one or two threats. I further assume that you would be too embarrassed by my continued involvement in assisting the Department of Justice in the Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey post-conviction matters. Yes, they are embarrassed, Ken. Get the hell out of it. Leave it alone. It's nothing to do with you anymore. However, sorry, I added that bit. He carries on. I want to hear you ask me to step aside from those duties and make sure you're ready to appoint additional resources to assist Tom Fallon in the conclusion of the mammoth prosecution. And now remember, at that time, the most expensive in Wisconsin history. Then he gets really angry. You can tell the tone of his email. It's as I say, go and check it out. Really, really good. You'll have a good laugh at this. In fact, he carries on, have your boss, Van Hollen, ask me to step aside from assisting DOJ in any future matters. And he puts in brackets, being asked to train district attorneys. That is very worrisome that there are other district attorneys out there that have been trained by Ken Kratz. Seriously? But not only that, accepting any major special prosecutions. So in other words, they rule out Ken Kratz when they really want a special case to be prosecuted. One wonders why. I think we get that from the next statement from Ken Kratz. He writes, when your boss preaches about supporting elected DAs across the state, especially ones with my reputation and history of unconditional, and he writes that in big capital letters. I'll read that again. With my reputation and history of unconditional assistance to the Department of Justice. What does that mean, Ken? What have you been doing for the Department of Justice that makes you then say that you can threaten them with the fact that I have given you unconditional? That is very, very worrisome. He carries on, I wonder if this is the kind of support he is referring to. As I say, go and read the emails. You will thoroughly enjoy them because we know the history of what happened. But anyway, I'll keep reading them, and any more gems like that, I shall be happy to report. Bye for now.